Today, we're going to talk about caregiving and how much it really costs. So get ready with your pocket and your money. Today, we're going to be tackling the cost of caregiving. Many families don't realize the cost of caregiving until after they're in the middle of it and money is depleting. We're going to go further into how much does it cost to be in a nursing home? How much does it cost on average to be in an assisted living, memory care? And how much would that cost if you made the decision to stay at home and have a caregiver at home for your loved one? This is going to give you a clear picture of your finances and how this is going to impact the longevity and how long you can afford to continue that level of care. We're going to start with the biggest ticket number. What's going to cost you the most money? If you made the decision to do 24/7 care for your loved one at home, how much would that cost? This will differ depending on where you are in the United States, but I would say for the state of Texas, the average cost of care is about $35 an hour. So if you round that up to 168 hours a week of care, you're looking on the average for a year over $300,000. That is expensive. How long could you keep that up for? Could you do it for 1 year? As we know, our aging population is aging and getting older and are seeing more numbers of 3-digit, 100, 101, 102. How much can you bear and how much have you saved for to be able to afford care in your home? On average, most families are doing about 20 hours of care a week. You're looking roughly about $35,000 a year in extra care to support what you're already doing. So if you add that up, if you're adding the $35,000, if you had a private caregiver in your home from an agency, and actually adding your time that you're putting into it, you're looking around over $70,000, your unpaid time and the paid time. This can get very expensive. This is why we mentioned in the previous episode about long-term care insurance, knowing if your loved one has VA benefits. It is good and important to know your local resources that can also benefit not only your loved one, but also for the sanity of you, right? How much can you bear and how much is this gonna cost? It gets really expensive and knowing your resources is your best option. So we're gonna get into the finances and the money about how much this is all gonna cost, kind of based on category. So we talked about home care. Home care 24/7 by far is probably the most expensive option. But that's not your only option. When a loved one is not appropriate to stay at home and they would benefit from social interaction, I do suggest an assisted living. Assisted living, depending on where you are in the United States or in the state of Texas, can differ in price based on the care level and the size of the community and all the different offerings that they may have. So within an assisted living, you're looking around $5,000 on the low end to about $8,000 a month. I want you guys to be sure when you're going into an assisted living, for example, for a tour, to see if that's the appropriate place. You have to also know that this cost is just for the rent and some other amenities. The other part about this is that there's care levels. So depending on, your medications, how often that person needs to bathe per week, those are additional costs that is going to be inclusive of your total care packages. Every community is a little bit different. Some communities have all the pricing all inclusive and some are a la carte. Look into that and make sure you budget for that back. For those who have family members that have more acute medical conditions that cannot be managed at home or within an assisted living, I think it's best that you go to a nursing home where you have around-the-clock nursing care that can assist you. When you're in a private room versus a semi-private room, that can make all the difference in the cost to live in a nursing home full-time. A semi-private room can run you around $9,000 a month. You're looking at about $104,000 a year. For a full private room, you're looking at about $10,000 a month, around $120,000 a year. Let's go back to assisted living. With an assisted living at about $5,000 a month on average, you're looking around $60,000 a year just for that extra cost. I want you to be inclusive if you're at the nursing home setting, the assisted living setting, as well as your in-home costs, right? There's additional things that you have to be inclusive for. Maybe they're gonna need chuck pads, they're gonna need diapers, they're gonna have extra needs that are gonna be out-of-pocket costs. In addition, your copay, insurance, these are all additional costs that need to be inclusive into the budget. One thing I wanna add is that as being a caregiving owner for over the past 13 years, I find that many families, once they're in the middle of it, really don't wanna talk about the finances. It's something that we want to avoid because it's so hairy, so scary, so big that we end up making the decision to do it ourselves. And then we have burnout, and then we have other issues, and then we have health issues ourselves. But if you're able to know your resources locally, have a backup plan with a caregiving agency for your respite care, and really set a budget for what all you can afford, can really make this transition a lot easier. One story I do want to say is that what people are sacrificing. As we mentioned in the previous episode, many women hold the burden for caregiving, and when they're holding the burden to caregiving, they're losing loss of income. One of the sacrifices that we see most families dealing with is maybe in a household, the wife may work part-time. They are now changing roles to have a completely full-time job as well as a job on the weekends to assist in paying for caregiving. With that, many people are working more hours just to be able to afford the care for their loved one. We want to take this into account because if we're spending a lot of time working and not also doing our self-care, how are we able to care for our loved ones? All right, let's go back to finances and how we can afford it. We talked about the private pay, but let's also discuss some of the benefits that can come with other resources. For example, with VA benefits, if you're a veteran, you are entitled to different funding options that will assist with care. One option, for example, is VA home-based support services. VA home-based support services is an added benefit that you can get around 9 hours of care a week or up to 40, 50 hours. This is evaluated by a VA physician. At that time, they're looking at all your comorbidities. When I use a big word like that, all your health issues, all your health issues that you're dealing with, they're gonna assess that in an appointment at a VA hospital to see what the best care is. That is a great benefit that many veterans do not access. If you go to our website or any of our local resources, they can outline the step-by-step as to how you can access the VA benefits and that extra benefit to relieve the burden of the financial private pay costs. Another option for those that have traditional Medicare Part A and B, as well as a cognitive deficit dementia diagnosis, they can benefit from a new research program called the GUIDE. The GUIDE program is improving the dementia experience. This opportunity is a 7-year pilot program through Center of Medicare and Medicaid Services that allows families, if you're caring for a loved one with dementia, you can actually get up to 72 hours of free caregiving. In addition, you also get a care navigator that is going to be able to assist you with your resources, making doctor's appointments, and walking through the stressors of caregiving. As we mentioned in our previous episode, emotional support is huge for caregiving. Sometimes we don't find the time to go to support group. Sometimes we don't want to burden other family members with what's happening with caregiving. With a care navigator through this program, you could call them 24/7, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and give them a call to say, hey, my mom's having an episode. With dealing with the diagnosis of dementia, every day is going to be a different day. And sometimes you need to have different options in your toolkit that you can access to be able to not only redirect, but have a better caregiving plan for your loved one. Let's just discuss this money and how on the low end, on the high end, how much is this going to cost? So what we talked about is on the low end, on an annual basis, you're looking at minimum maybe around $50,000 in care per year for your loved one. But on the high end, if you wanted around-the-clock care with a home care agency, you're looking roughly around $300,000 a year. In the in-between costs, we're looking about $100,000 to $200,000 if you're doing an assisted living or nursing home option, depending if you do a semi-private, private room, or full care levels, depending on the assisted living of your choice. For our next episode, we're going to discuss about caregiving costs and really how that can all be navigated with trust, our assets, and how for the long term, this can be a benefit for your loved one. We encourage listeners to not only subscribe, but also to share your personal stories and share this content with others that would benefit from what we've talked about in regards to the reality of the cost and the preparation that's needed to care for your loved one.